Battlestar Galactica collapses the distinction between normality and the other, which is fundamental to the identification of the self. Released first as a miniseries in 2003, Battlestar Galactica's proximity to 9/11 and the war in Iraq situates it as a powerful expression of post-9/11 paranoia, which resulted from the actual breakdown between normality and the other that stemmed from this national trauma. Battlestar Galactica depicts the start of a war between humans and Cylons, man-made machines which have evolved from robots into humanoid machines. The Cylons initiate a nuclear genocide on the 12 human-colonized planets, wiping out the entire human race except for some 50,000 survivors. The series follows the Battlestar Galactica, an aging military ship that becomes the sole protector of humanity as it tries to find the legendary 13th colony of Earth, which the survivors seek in order to rebuild the human race. Battlestar Galactica is ultimately a series about identity. The fundamental question underlying it is, what does it mean to be human, or in other words, what does it mean to be normal? The show deals with this question through its representation of the relationship between humans and Cylons, or that between normality and the other, which is a central issue in the genre of science fiction. Science fiction collapses the distinction between normality and the other in its portrayal of the imagined possibilities of real-world science and technology so that robots, time travel, and life in space become part of the norm in the science fiction genre. Battlestar Galactica blends normality and otherness in its depiction of humanoid Cylons who mix aspects of both humans and machines. There are different types of Cylons in the series: humanoid Cylons, Cylon raider ships, and traditional Cylon machines. Yet all the Cylons, even the outwardly machine-like ones, live as organisms that function through a combination of organs and technology, rather than through cold, hard technology alone. In this way, the series undercuts the assumption of Cylon otherness through its portrayal of Cylons as organisms not entirely different from those that we assume to be normal, such as humans or animals. This collapse of normality with the other in Battlestar Galactica parallels a similar breakdown that occurred with 9/11. 9/11 took place on a regular day on U.S. soil and using everyday technology such as airplanes and cell phones. Part of the horror then was the unexpected collapse of normality with the other, when suddenly there was no identifiable other and normality itself had in fact been used against us. 9/11 marked a new era of information as it was the first major event of the internet age. With the availability of news via television and the internet, the coverage of 9/11 saturated American homes in a previously unseen way, and thus brought the otherness of terrorism into our normal lives. Consequently, the aftermath of Bush's axis of evil and finger-pointing of the enemy attempted to reposition American society as normal and separate from this evil other that had infiltrated American life. More importantly, the events of 9/11 produced a culture of paranoia because ultimately, 9/11 distorted our ability for self-identification. That is, the existence of the other is essential to our identification of our presumably normal selves. We know who we are based on who we are not. However, once that line is blurred, paranoia ensues because by not being able to identify the other, we in a sense lose the capacity for identifying ourselves. This desire for identification is essential to the paranoid person who experiences an excessive need for identification. The paranoiac seeks to name agents of power, conspiracy theories, and the causal events of history, all of which boils down to a desire to identify the other as the paranoiac tries to find all those against him. This paranoid characteristic emerged strongly in post-9/11 United States as there was an emphasis on identification. Who is the good American, who is the enemy, and who is the true source behind the terrorist attacks? The significance of identification became clear as racial profiling and scapegoating became a norm in the United States. With the sudden collapse of normality with the other, Americans sought tangible ways of recapturing normality. Thus, the visual identification of the other based on race and ethnicity attempted to rebuild that lost sense of normality. The presence of humanoid Cylons in Battlestar Galactica underscores this need for identification as it suddenly becomes essential to the very survival of the human race to discover who is a Cylon and who is not. The possibility for identification is complicated by sleeper agents, Cylons who do not even know they are Cylons until activated, and as such exist with an entirely false sense of self and identity. As a result, the human characters of Battlestar Galactica experience a paranoid anxiety once they realize that anyone can be a Cylon. A witch hunt of sorts ensues as people begin pointing fingers at anyone they might suspect of being a Cylon as a way of assuaging their own anxieties of being properly normal. This central question of identity emerges most strongly in Battlestar Galactica's representation of Earth as an unexpected source of paranoia. For even in the alternate universe of Battlestar Galactica, Earth remains tied to a comprehensible normality as it represents the origins of the human race. However, the discovery of Earth as a nuked, desolate wasteland destroys the normality that Earth represents. Earth's destruction signifies a universe where there truly can be no difference between normality and the other, which the series solidifies both with the alliance between humans and Cylons and in the loss of Cylon immortality. A group of rebel Cylons works with the humans to find Earth, a location which represents an integral part of Cylon history that they desire to understand. Part of this alliance between humans and Cylons requires the destruction of a Cylon resurrection ship, which removes the Cylons' ability to download their minds into new bodies, and so forces them into human-like mortality. In the end, then, the most fundamental difference between humans and Cylons is removed, and all find themselves facing an uncertain future after they encounter the apocalyptic reality of Earth itself. The discovery of Earth leaves the viewer with the fundamental question of what it means to be normal in this world where normality and otherness can no longer exist separately. Battlestar Galactica has not given a clean, comprehensible answer to this question, and so it remains tied to post-9/11 paranoia in the United States, where the same question has been left unanswered as we attempt to navigate the differences between otherness and normality. Yet the positioning of Earth as an ambiguous symbol of both otherness and normality challenges the notion that the difference between the two is anything more than an illusion, because as both the show and the events of 9/11 demonstrate, anyone can be the other. The comfort of normality becomes uncertain in these worlds on-screen and off, so that ultimately paranoia emerges as the most plausible reaction to the collapse of this dichotomy.